Somasara, you set this website up last year. You knew that there was a problem, but I wonder if even you have been shocked by what you've received.
Yes, it is shocking. It's harrowing. But, you know, at the same time, it's uplifting and very encouraging to see so many survivors being able to come forward for the first time and, you know, just verbalize their experiences, which so many of them have been hiding for years.
Summer, what was the reason or the moment that led you to set the website up? Clearly, you'd been talking to your friends or you had heard some sort of anecdotes or stories of situations, but to then take that step to create this safe space where people could share those stories. Was there a particular incident that you thought, we've really got to do something about this?
Yes, it was, you know, back in June 2020, and it was after having many conversations with friends and realizing just how many of us had had these experiences of rape culture and sexual violence throughout our teenage years that we actually hadn't really shared with each other or also hidden from adults. And, you know, in response to this, I decided to share my experiences on Instagram, and I was overwhelmed with responses from friends and old friends and people in my life and complete strangers who were all reaching out to me to just emphasize that they really resonated with everything I was saying about rape culture. And when I speak about rape culture, I'm talking about, you know, when things that aren't normal are normalized. So things like sexual harassment, misogyny, the non-consensual sharing of intimate photos or upskirting. When these are normalized, this can actually act as a gateway to more serious criminal acts such as rape and sexual assault. So it's about, you know, addressing a wider culture that trivializes and normalizes these behaviors.
Summer, where is the responsibility? Because in instances of rape and sexual assault, obviously, those are criminal acts and must be reported to the police. Do school children not feel empowered to do that or intimidated to do that? Is it the responsibility of schools where they haven't given enough support to those children who would want to do that and perhaps have not cracked down on the problem with those responsible? Is it the problem with parents who are not providing the proper education at home in respect and how to act properly? Is it social media? I mean, where do we fix this?
You know, I think rape culture is a universal problem. I think it exists everywhere, in all schools, all universities, at home, and in all of society. So that means, you know, the question of responsibility, it's everyone. I don't think this is about naming or shaming or pointing the finger at a person or a place or an institution. It's about everyone participating in these conversations. It's so important that we continue having them. And, you know, because it's a cultural problem that needs to be addressed on a cultural level. It's about addressing and changing those deeply entrenched sexist attitudes that exist in society. And that means everyone, it's everyone's responsibility.
So Michael Welshaw, you're head of Ofsted, former head of Ofsted, of course. And when you were you banned hugging in playground in that role, because, of course, you were concerned with how that might come across as a head teacher. You were concerned how that might be perceived, the implication of what that might sort of carry in terms of the person that was being hugged. So clearly you were trying to make strides to separate what perhaps could be seen as something on Summer's website as some sort of abuse or sort of an affectionate move by somebody within the playground that actually wasn't welcomed by another person. I wonder what you make of this, because I know my boys are teenage boys and they're being taught PHSE, and I know that their school takes this sort of thing very seriously, and they're trying to get the boys in their school to understand the importance of consent and what is and isn't acceptable. But somewhere along the line, it is going wrong. If you're having to ban hugging in a playground, and also we are now seeing this absolute deluge of testimonies on Summer's website, where have we gone so wrong?
Yes, I mean, I banned hugging as a head teacher, not as head of Ofsted. I was the head of a large secondary school in East London, and it was seen as the norm for boys when they came into the school to hug girls. There was nothing malicious in it, but they saw that as the norm. But of course, some overstepped the mark. And once I got complaints from girls that that some boys were overstepping the mark, I banned it at great cost, I have to say, to the school myself, because it hit the headlines and I was seen as being far too strict and far too authoritarian on this one. But looking back on it now, it was absolutely the right thing to do.
When you made that decision, sorry to interrupt, when you made that decision, did you notice that because suddenly you had cracked down on what is usually considered just an affectionate gesture, that suddenly the boys and the girls within the school started taking seriously what actually is appropriate behaviour and what isn't appropriate behaviour?
Yes, absolutely. They've got to know where the delineating lines are. And it's absolutely crucial that head teachers make it clear what is acceptable behaviour towards girls and what is not acceptable behaviour. And I did that as a head teacher. And I have to say, you know, I was a head for a very long time and a teacher for a very long time. And I became increasingly concerned about the sexualization of society, that deviant behavior and bad behavior and sexualized behavior is seen as the norm. Youngsters are bombarded with sexual images on the television in a way when I was growing up 50 odd years ago, 60 odd years ago, you never saw. So society's got to look at itself and ask itself whether young people are being brought up in the right way, and are societal norms the ones that are going to be acceptable to young people.
So, Michael Walshaw, Maria Miller, who was a Conservative MP, she did a report into this back in 2016, just towards the end of your time as Ofsted chief, uncovering the scale and impact of sexual harassment and sexual violence in schools across England, and said that it must be acted upon urgently. I think lots of people will ask, what has Ofsted been doing in its responsibility towards schools? I mean, I think you had a different responsibility when it came to the private sector, but this also encompasses these complaints, the state sector as well. Is Ofsted, has it failed in its duty towards these students?
Well, certainly, I mean, I can't make a comment about what's happening now at Ofsted, but certainly in my time when I was chief inspector, we brought out numerous reports which talked about behaviour and culture in schools. I remember a very important report we brought out, which said that there was far too much low-level disruption in school, where youngsters were behaving badly, and where you have a poor culture, where you have low-level disruption, where head teachers and senior staff don't crack down on behaviour, this is where the bad youngster, the youngster who has the potential to go up badly off the rails, then gets involved in this sort of sexualized behavior. It's all to do with high expectations and the culture of the school, and that's set by the head teacher and the senior staff. So
you think that schools have become too lax generally in terms of discipline and behavior?
Culture is everything. I was in the school the other day where plastered across the walls of the school all sorts of stuff on the curriculum. But actually, the behaviour of the children was not good outside the classroom. There was noise, there was disruption, youngsters calling each other names and being loud and aggressive. Now, unless head teachers and senior staff set the tone, set the culture, have high expectations, clearly define the parameters for behaviour, then these sorts of things happen. But schools are part of society, and we need to look at the way our society is going, the sort of sexualization that I talked about.
Sue, if we can come to you, you're a former detective. I wonder what you see as the police's role within this as well, because of course the 10,000 or so testimonies on this website will be looked at very, very carefully, because there is some very serious allegations in there, and there are some victims that have been failed dramatically.
And also, I wonder whether those victims actually want to pursue a criminal prosecution, which is obviously another story. Can I just pick up on something before I go on to that? This is not just about teachers, and it's not just about setting in the environment, changing the culture in school. A lot of this happens outside of school. I've been to so many schools where young girls, I've had a session with them, they're telling me the dating processes have changed. They've sent videos online. that gets all displayed over social media. It's about boundaries, it's about self-respect, it's about parents being parents and actually changing how they behave. And they are responsible for their children. And education isn't just about, 9 however stars you get or A levels. It's about the whole, how you encourage your child to grow and develop. I've got a son and a daughter, and I would say both of them have been brought up with boundaries, self-respect, to respect, men, to respect women. And as society, we all need to change. And the other thing, technology, the apps that are out there now, oh my goodness, it is shocking. And I bet, Ben, you probably don't even know what your teenage boys are on, or Susanna, because every 5 minutes the apps are changing. I know a number of friends that work on the criminal side of, with technology, and it is shocking. And I wonder how many of us really understand what's going on in the bedrooms, who they're talking to. And also it is about getting some old-fashioned values back. And whilst teachers play a role, of course they do, and police play a role, but I think we have to look at this, wider, and get some of the young people who've been involved, who've been victims, to actually inform the future, to help victims in the future, and to help other children. Because at the moment, I just think to start blaming, we've got to stop victim blaming, stop blaming teachers, stop blaming parents. Let's look at this and try to fix it properly. And that how you'll fix it is by talking to those people who've been affected by it. And I just really are concerned for the future that technology, we are not policing technology. Yeah. Those companies have a responsibility and they should be doing something. And I just think, and to think it's just public schools, that is nonsense. I've been to state schools and listened to girls whose pictures have been all over, social media.